This happened a few months ago. I was working as a delivery driver, making late-night runs across the state. Gas stations were just stops along the way. I didn't think much about them until three strange things happened. One night, I pulled into a gas station. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The neon sign flickered like it was about to go out. I got out, stretched, and started to fill up my tank. That's when I saw a figure in a parked car nearby. They were staring right at me. It felt wrong somehow. I thought they needed help, so I walked over. But before I could reach the car, it was empty. I didn't see anyone get out. I stood there, confused. My heart raced. I thought I was being watched, but I brushed it off. Over the next few nights, I found myself stopping at that gas station again. I wanted to figure out what I had seen. One evening, I pulled in and noticed a few customers inside the store. I grabbed some snacks and headed to the register. But when I looked around, everyone was frozen in place, just staring. It felt like a picture, not real life. I blinked hard. When I looked again, they were moving. A chill ran down my spine that I kept trying to shake it off. I returned to that gas station a few nights later. The lights flickered again. I was alone this time. As I walked down the aisles looking for snacks, I heard laughter echoing from the back. It was loud but unsettling. I stopped and listened, my heart racing. I thought someone was playing a prank. But when I looked around, nobody was there. The laughter faded away, leaving me feeling cold and uneasy. To clear my head, I started changing my routes. I pulled into another gas station. As soon as I stepped out of my truck, the lights blew out one by one. I was standing alone in the dark. It felt like the world was watching me. I tried to focus, to push those other incidents from my mind, but I was still rattled. Then one night, I pulled into yet another station. I walked inside to get some coffee. As I glanced out the window, I felt my stomach drop. There it was, the same figure in the car, staring at me like before. I took a step back, my heart racing. Who were they? Why were they watching? I turned to leave, but suddenly, I felt a soft whisper brush past me. It said, "You shouldn't have come back." Chills flooded through me. I stood frozen, then turned around. Nobody was there. I don't know what was happening. All I knew was that I couldn't go back to gas stations anymore. I just wanted to forget those nights and the things I saw. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for me, watching from the shadows. The days after that last encounter dragged on. I tried to forget about the gas stations, focusing on my delivery routes. But that figure haunted my thoughts. I could feel it lurking just outside my vision, waiting for the right moment to resurface. One evening, after a particularly long shift, I pulled into a diner instead of a gas station. I needed coffee and something warm to eat. The lights buzzed above, and the smell of grease filled the air. I sat in a booth and tried to relax, but every time the door opened, I glanced up, half expecting to see the figure walk in. I was lost in thought, pushing my food around my plate when the door swung open. A rush of cold air swept through. I looked up, and my breath caught in my throat. A woman stood there, her gaze scanning the diner until it locked on me. She had dark hair, and her eyes seemed to pierce right through me. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. She approached my booth. I wanted to shrink back, but I managed to look her way. "Do you remember me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head, confusion swirling. "I don't think so." Her expression shifted, and for a split second, I saw something almost familiar about her. My mind raced. Had I seen her at the gas station? Then it hit me. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I had taken out of paranoia from my previous visits. There she was, in the background of one shot, frozen, just like everyone else. I blinked in disbelief. That night at the gas station I started, fear bubbling up. You were there. She nodded slowly, her face grim. I tried to warn you. It doesn't end with just watching. What do you mean? I leaned forward, desperate for answers. The woman leaned in closer, her voice barely audible. They feed off the fear. The Watcher is just one of many. You have to leave before more come for you. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. I glanced around the diner. Other patrons were engrossed in their meals, oblivious to our conversation. I felt exposed. Suddenly, the lights flickered. My heart raced. I could hear the sound of laughter again, echoing in the background. It was the same laughter from the gas station, the same unsettling laughter that sent chills down my spine. I pushed away from the booth, ready to leave, but she grabbed my wrist, her grip firm. You can't run from them. They'll find you. You have to face it. Before I could respond, the lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness. My breath quickened as I struggled to see anything. The laughter grew louder, surrounding me. Panic surged through me. Then, just as abruptly as it had gone out, the lights blinked back on. The diner seemed unchanged, but when I looked back to where the woman had been, she was gone. The chair was empty. I bolted out of the diner, my heart racing. I stood on the street, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. Something was happening, and I was afraid I was at the center of it. I needed answers, and I had no idea where to find them. That's when I saw something flash in my peripheral vision. I turned quickly. There it was again, the figure standing across the street and watching. I felt my heart kick into overdrive as I stared at the figure. It stood still, just like before, cloaked in shadow. My instincts told me to run, but my feet felt glued to the pavement. I blinked, desperate to make sense of what I was seeing. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if it knew I was watching. I tried to gather myself. I remembered what the woman had said about facing it. That thought sent a tremor of dread through me. What did she mean by that? I knew I had to find out. That I took a cautious step closer. The streetlight flickered, illuminating the figure for just a moment. Was it taller than I remembered? I couldn't tell if it had a face, but I felt its gaze bore into me. I swallowed hard, trying to shake off the feeling of impending doom. Hey! I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. Who are you? The figure didn't move, but I felt an urge to uncover the truth, like I was being pulled in. I took another step. Just then, it turned and disappeared down an alley. I hesitated. The woman had warned me. But the need for answers was stronger than my fear. I sprinted after the figure, my breath escaping in short gasps. I reached the alley, and the smell of damp concrete mixed with something rotten hit me. I stepped into the darkness, peering down the narrow passage. Wait! I yelled, but only silence responded. The alley was empty. I scanned the area, looking for any sign of it. And that's when I noticed something on the ground, an old flip phone, cracked and dirty. I picked it up, feeling a jolt of recognition. This model was outdated, almost an artifact now that I flipped it open. The screen flickered to life, and I saw a single photo displayed, a blurry image of the gas station from my first terrifying encounter. Something caught my eye. A figure stood among the shadows, partially hidden behind the pumps. Could it be? My hands trembled as I scrolled through the gallery. Each image seemed to grow darker and more distorted. I felt like I was being pulled deeper into whatever this was. I wanted to stop, to put the phone down, but I couldn't. As I flicked through the photos, I saw details: a license plate number, a street name. Hope and dread battled within me. If I followed this lead, I could find out more, confront what was behind this. But the thought terrified me. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. They echoed off the alley walls. My heart dropped. I turned swiftly, but no one was there. Just the shadows creeping closer. I took a deep breath and bolted back toward the street, clutching the phone tightly. My mind raced. I had to dig deeper. I couldn't just ignore this. As I reached the street, I looked up and froze. There it was again, the figure standing at the corner, a few feet away. I could see it more clearly now. It was just a silhouette, but it felt like it was smiling. Then, it vanished. No footsteps, just silence. I shivered, knowing that whatever this was, it wasn't finished with me yet. I glanced down at the phone in my hand. I knew I was one step closer to uncovering the truth, but now I felt like I was being hunted. With a deep breath, I turned and followed the path the figure had taken. I would find out what was happening, even if it scared me to my core. I stepped out onto the main road, my heart racing as I scanned the darkened corners for any sign of the figure. The street was eerily quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by a heavy silence that felt suffocating. I glanced down at the flip phone again. I needed to follow those clues. I turned the corner at the intersection where the gas station should have been. It felt wrong. Everything seemed covered in shadows that swallowed the light from the street lamps. The gas station was a few blocks away, its neon sign flickering in the distance. I made my way toward it, each step echoing louder than the last. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I quickened my pace, clutching the phone like a lifeline. With every footfall, I felt more paranoid, more exposed. What if it was following me? I reached the gas station and searched for the license plate number ID seen on the phone. My eyes darted across the parked cars, hoping to catch a glimpse of something familiar. But all I saw were worn tires and faded colors. Nothing stood out. Just then, I noticed movement near the pumps. A figure was hunched over, its back turned to me. My breath caught in my throat. It didn't look like the shadowy figure I'd seen before, but there was something unsettling about it. I hesitated for a moment, then forced myself to approach. "Excuse me?" I called out, my voice shaky. "Are you all right?" The figure shifted, but didn't respond. I felt my heart pound in my chest as I closed the gap. The darkness made it hard to see, but as I got closer, I could see it was a woman. She was rummaging through a bag, her hands moving rapidly. "Hey!" I said again, louder this time. "What are you doing?" She turned her head slightly, and I got a glimpse of her face. Her eyes were wide and filled with fear. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered urgently. "It knows you're looking for it." "What? Who?" My confusion deepened. "There's something dangerous," she continued, glancing over her shoulder. "It's not just a figure. It's feeding off your fear." I felt a chill run through me. My instincts screamed for me to back away, but curiosity pinned me in place. "What do you know?" Before she could answer, a loud clattering echoed through the gas station. I turned to see a metal trash can rolling across the pavement, as if pushed by an unseen force. The woman's expression turned to sheer panic. "It's here!" she shrieked, scrambling back. "We need to go." Panic surged through me. I turned to run, but just as I did, I felt a presence behind me. I couldn't bring myself to look. Instead, I sprinted toward the exit, the flip phone slipping from my fingers and clattering to the ground. That's when I heard a whisper coming from the shadows. Before I could comprehend what it was saying, everything went dark. Suddenly, I was alone in the void, the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I had no idea where I was or what was coming next. All I knew was that I had to escape whatever was hunting me. I gasped as I came back to awareness, my chest heaving. The familiar scent of gasoline and stale air returned, mixing with a suffocating heat. My surroundings were dim, illuminated only by the faint glow of the gas station's flickering sign. I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes, but the darkness felt thick. "Where am I?" I whispered, confusion sinking in. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet, the memories of the woman and the presence all flooding back that I turned instantly toward the entrance, but the door was sealed shut. Cold metal met my palms as I pushed against it, panic bubbling up inside me. Then I heard a soft noise, a shuffle. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely audible. My own breath echoed back to me, mixed with the sound of something sliding across the floor. I felt my blood run cold. "Is someone there?" I asked again, though part of me was terrified of the answer. I took a tentative step deeper into the gas station. The area was cluttered, boxes and trash strewn about like the aftermath of a storm. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement. A shadow darted past the aisle of snacks, and I froze. My heart thudded in my chest like a drum. I wanted to call out, but the words died before they reached my lips. That I inched forward, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, casting long shadows that seemed alive. Each flicker made me feel like I was underwater, the world warping with each pulse. I was too scared to breathe, that is when I spotted it, the flip phone. It lay cracked on the ground, its screen cracked but the clues still accessible. I hurried to pick it up, my fingers trembling. My heart sank as I noticed a new message blinking on the screen, something I hadn't seen before. "Meet me at the old diner. They're watching. Trust no one." My stomach twisted with dread. I looked around, but the gas station was silent again, the shadows stretching and shifting in the corners. I felt the weight of someone's gaze on me, an unseen presence lurking just beyond my sight. That I turned back toward the exit, desperation driving my movements. But my escape was interrupted by an agonizing shriek cutting through the quiet. The woman. It was coming from the other side of the building. The decision lay bare before me, run or help. Every instinct screamed to flee. Yet, that voice from earlier echoed in my mind, warning me of something worse than the figure that I hesitated. The sound of heavy footsteps was gaining ground, and I was torn. The fear was suffocating, but I couldn't ignore it. "Don't be a coward." I turned and headed toward the sound. As I approached the back room, dread pooled in my stomach. The door creaked open, revealing a hell of confusion and fear. The woman stood against the wall, looking frantic, her eyes darting to the shadows. "Help!" she cried, just as a figure emerged behind her. I gasped. The shadowy figure I had seen before now materialized, dark and towering in the gloom. "Run!" the woman screamed. That single command ignited something primal within me. I bolted towards her, desperate to pull her away from whatever nightmare had trapped us both. But as I reached out, I stumbled, and everything shifted once more. The floor slipped from under me. I barely managed to catch myself, the sudden weight of confusion almost knocking the breath out of me. I glanced up, heart racing. The dark figure hesitated only for a moment, its features lost in the shadows, looming like a storm cloud. I felt the woman's hand reach for mine, desperately pulling me away. "This way," she urged, her voice strained. I followed her, fear driving us both, as we plunged deeper into the chaos of the gas station. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind us, relentless and impatient. "Who are they?" I gasped, trying to keep pace. The hallways wound like a maze, cluttered with debris that threatened to trip us at every turn. "I don't know," she shouted back. "Only that they're looking for someone. We have to get out of here." Her eyes were wide, fear etched into her features, but there was a glimmer of something else, urgency. That we pushed through a door marked employees only, stumbling into a narrow back room. A flickering light overhead hummed ominously, adding to the fraying edges of my sanity. Shelves lined with old, dusty supplies created a makeshift barrier, and then I noticed it, a series of notes scattered across a desk, hastily scribbled. My hands moved without thinking, skimming the pages as I tried to piece together what was happening. Each note spoke of a search, of warnings tied to the diner mentioned in the message from the phone. Words like watcher and follow jumped out at me. The woman pressed against the door, holding it closed as I read. "What were you looking for?" she whispered, eyes darting toward the door. "A clue." Something that might tell us what is going on. Another loud bang resounded from the door, rattling the frame. She flinched, and panic surged through me. "There's no time," she shouted. "We need to move." Then I heard voices on the other side. They were low and menacing, like predators in the night. "I know they went this way," one voice said. "They want to escape this time. What do they want with us?" I asked, looking to her for answers. "I don't know," she replied, her voice trembling. "But it has to do with what happened at the diner. Someone got hurt there bad." Before I could respond, the door creaked ominously. We both froze, hearts pounding in rhythm. "Check the supply room," another voice ordered, and dread curled in my stomach. My first instinct was to flee, but I knew we had nowhere to hide. That's when it hit me. I glanced back at the notes, something ominous coursing through my veins. "If we can find a way out of here, we might make it," I said. And just like that, as I turned to the window, I saw something. A flash of movement in the shadows outside. Someone watching. A sudden rush of adrenaline shot through me. I grabbed her arm. "We can't stay here. We have to find another way out." But before we could make a move, the door burst open. The air turned electric with tension as menacing figures poured into the room. My throat went dry, and I felt the world narrowing down to that moment. I looked at the woman, dread washing over my face. "I don't think we can escape this time." The figures moved closer, their intentions clear. It felt like the end, but that was just the beginning. The figures filled the small room, their glares piercing through the dim light. I barely caught a glimpse of their faces, rough, unshaven, with eyes that betrayed no emotion. My heart raced, thrumming loudly in my ears. I had to think fast. "Run!" I yelled, shoving the woman aside just as one of the figures lunged forward. She hesitated but then took off through a side door behind the shelves. I followed, adrenaline pushing me forward, desperate to escape. The hallway twisted and turned, a real-life maze. Cold sweat dripped down my back. I glanced back. The men were relentless, their heavy footsteps pounding after us. "There has to be another exit." I shouted, my breath coming in gasps. The woman pressed her hand against the wall, panting, her eyes wild. "This way!" she shouted, darting down a narrow passageway. I followed her lead, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. The hallway opened into a cluttered room filled with stacked crates. A faint light filtered in through a grimy window. I peeked back. The figures were still coming. My chest tightened at the sight of them moving deliberately, searching every inch of the gas station. "Help me!" I heard her cry, dragging my attention back to her. She was struggling with a crate that was slightly ajar. "We can stack these to block the door." I rushed over, joining her in shoving the crates together. Each thud echoed in my ears, drowning out the chaos outside. We finally wedged a heavy crate against the door and stepped back, panting. "What now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The woman looked around, her face flushed with anxiety. "We have to hide. They'll be in here any second." Without thinking, I grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind the stacks. We crouched down, hearts racing, ears straining to hear any sign of our pursuers. Minutes felt like hours. We huddled together in silence, the air thick with tension. Then I heard a voice from just outside the door. "They can't hide forever." My eyes widened. "What do they want?" I muttered, my mind racing. "I told you." Her eyes searched my face. "They're looking for the diner. The secret's there. We were just in the wrong place." Before I could respond, we heard the creak of the door. It opened slowly, then stopped. "They'll never get out of here," one voice growled, followed by a cruel laugh that I held my breath, desperate for a way out. And then, from somewhere in the dark, came a loud crash. The distraction sent the men rushing towards the sound, leaving our hiding spot unguarded. "Go!" I whispered urgently, grabbing her hand. We slipped out from behind the crates, and I peered into the hallway. It was now or never. As we sprinted down the hall, a realization hit me like a punch to the gut. What if we can't escape? I glanced back, fear gripping me again. The panic felt overwhelming, clawing at my mind. No. We have to keep running. She pulled me back into action, and I nodded, forcing my legs to keep moving. But in that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something much larger was at stake, something beyond the chaos of this gas station, and just as we turned the corner, the ground shook beneath our feet. I stumbled, and then the lights flickered to black. The darkness swallowed us whole. I felt the woman jerk beside me, her grip tightening around my wrist. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice barely audible through the thickening panic that filled the air. I stumbled forward, blinded. My heart hammered in my chest as I reached out for the wall, trying to steady myself. The faint smell of gasoline mixed with something else, something sharp. "Can you see anything?" I asked, hoping she had a better grasp of our surroundings. "Just a bit of light ahead," she replied, her voice filled with cautious hope. I focused on the direction she pointed, forcing my eyes to adjust. Soon, a faint glow flickered on the wall like a beacon. It grew clearer as we moved closer, with each step, shards of shattered glass crunched underfoot, and the heaviness of the air pressed down on me. I stopped suddenly. "Did you hear that?" It was a low rumble, almost like thunder, reverberating through the ground. "Not now," she hissed. But it was too late. The noise boomed again, followed by an explosion of light from somewhere behind us, illuminating the hallway in a sinister glow. Shadows danced around us, and I felt an icy grip of dread take hold of my stomach. "We can't stay here," I yelled, my voice rising with urgency. I bolted toward the light, dragging her along. We burst into the next room and halted, gasping. The source of the light became clear. It was an array of old machinery, all flickering with unstable power. Dials spun madly and warnings blinked red. A sense of foreboding filled me. "What is this place?" I whispered, half to myself and half to her. "They probably use it for repairs or to store something," she said, wide-eyed, scanning the room. "But it looks like something's gone wrong. We need to find safety now." Just then, a loud crash echoed from the hallway behind us. I turned, instincts screaming for me to run. But before I could react, a figure appeared, silhouetted in the doorway. My breath caught in my throat. "Stop right there," the figure shouted, voice low and dangerous that I barely caught a glimpse. A man, wild-eyed and frantic. My instincts kicked in again. "We can't let him block our way," I said, pushing the woman towards a side exit. "Go." "Wait," she hissed, yanking my arm. "What if he is here to help?" "No time," I snapped, taking a step toward the man. "Get out of here." Just then, the ground beneath us shook violently. I lost my balance and hit the floor hard. The lights flickered, threatening to plunge us back into darkness. I looked up just in time to see the man launch toward us, panic fueling his movements. "Get out. You don't understand," he screamed. I felt the weight of dread settle back into my chest. "What don't we understand?" But before he could answer, the room erupted in a deafening roar. I barely caught the image of flashing lights and the woman's terrified face as everything went dark around us again, and that's when I knew whatever was happening was just the beginning. I blinked, my eyes adjusting to the darkness after the blinding flash. In that moment of confusion, I felt a warm hand clutching mine. It was the woman, but she was trembling. We scrambled to our feet, hearts pounding. The room around us was silent now, eerily still. "What just happened?" I asked, trying to shake off the disorientation. I don't know," she stuttered, glancing nervously at the heavy shadows that seemed to swallow us whole. "Did you see him?" "Yes," I replied, memories of his wild eyes flashing in my mind. But what was he trying to warn us about? Before she could respond, a low, mechanical whirring filled the room. A dim light flickered on above us, revealing dust motes dancing through the stale air. I scanned the room, my pulse quickening as I caught sight of various instruments and valves lining the walls. "Look at that." I pointed to a large, rusted tank in the corner, its surface covered with strange symbols and fading paint. "What is in there?" She stepped closer but hesitated. "It looks like fuel." I felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Maybe it's connected to whatever is happening here. We need to check it out. Just as we approached the tank, another loud crash echoed from the hallway we had just escaped. "We have to move," I urged, grabbing her wrist again. We hurried towards a door on the opposite side of the room. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into deeper darkness. "Are we really going down there?" she whispered, fear evident in her voice. "It's better than waiting for whatever that was to find us," I replied, glancing back. The shadows at the door seemed to pulse, as if eager to swallow us whole. We hurried down the staircase, each step heavy and cautious. The air grew colder with every descent, but there was a faint glow growing stronger as we approached the bottom. I peered through the darkness, hoping for an escape. Finally, we reached the last step and emerged into what appeared to be a small room filled with strange contraptions. In the center, a flickering screen displayed an array of data points. "What is this place?" I breathed, feeling a mixture of excitement and dread, then I noticed something on the ground, a small, crumpled note. I bent down to pick it up. "Look," I said, holding it up for her to see. "It's a warning, I think." She leaned in to read it, her eyes widening. "What does it say?" "It talks about a containment breach and something about entities escaping." My hands trembled as I turned it over, hoping for more. But then, before I could decipher any more, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness again. The whirring noise intensified, vibrating through the concrete floor. "Get back!" I yelled, pulling her away from the screen. Then everything stopped, and I caught a glimpse of movement. Someone or something was standing in the shadows, watching us. The moment hung heavy in the room, suspended in darkness like a blade poised to drop. Straining my eyes against the blackness, I felt the very air thrum with tension. The whirring had ceased, replaced by a deafening silence that mocked our fear. Whatever it was, it had to be close. "Can you see anything?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking the stillness. "No. Just shadows." "But I can feel it," she murmured, stepping closer to me. My hand instinctively found hers, a lifeline tethering us amid the uncertainty. I could feel her pulse racing, matching mine as we stood together. Then, just like that, the lights flickered back on a flash that sent jolts of electricity rippling through the air. I squinted against the sudden brightness, a gasp escaping my lips when I saw the figure in the corner, partially hidden by machinery. It eyed us, a watchful presence, cloaked in dark intent. "Stay back!" I shouted, though my voice trembled. The figure didn't move but continued to observe intently. I could feel its gaze boring into me, feeding on my terror. I think it's the Watcher," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if it's come to claim us?" An overwhelming urge to bolt surged through me, but I wrestled my feet to stay put. "We need to find out what it wants," I said, forcing the uncertainty down. Slowly, I approached, keeping my grip on her hand. A low hum began to fill the space, causing shivers across my skin. As I stepped closer, the figure appeared human, yet its features melted into shadows, obscuring any distinct shape. Suddenly, it spoke, its voice a chilling echo across the room. "You should not have come here." "What do you want?" I demanded, though my voice quivered. "Your fear has summoned the others," it replied, the shadowy form wavering as if it had substance and yet was nothing at all. "You are linked to them now." "Linked?" The word twisted in my mind, bringing forth memories tied to the gas stations all the way to the watchful figure that first caught my eye. "Fear feeds them." You were drawn to seek, to discover, it continued, inching forward, the darkness spilling from its body. And now, they want more. And who are they? My companion pressed, the edge of desperation threading through her voice. Entities that relish in the shadows, born from the darkest corners of the human psyche. They have watched you for some time. It turned its gaze toward her, the implication clear: the danger was not only mine. Suddenly, the lights began to flicker again, and the vibrating hum intensified, shaking loose pieces of debris from above. Panic surged through me, an instinct crying to escape. The ground trembled, echoing the dark presence's assertion. "Run!" I shouted, turning back toward the staircase we'd just descended. I could feel the atmosphere pressing in, heavy with the weight of unseen threats. She followed, our footsteps pounding in tandem, growing louder as we dashed up the stairs. But every step felt like we were running against an unseen tide, holding us back, as if the very shadows sought to cling to us. Just as we reached the top, an ear-splitting crack echoed down the hall. The walls shook violently, and the dim lights flickered chaotically. No, no, no. Panic clawed at my throat. I glanced back to see shadows coiling at the edges of our vision, desperate and eager for our fear. "Keep going," the woman urged, pushing me forward as she glanced anxiously behind us. The figure was closing in, its laughter unearthly and sinister wrapping around us like tendrils. With every ounce of strength, I leapt forward, eyes locked ahead. Plunging back into the gas station, the cacophony of chaos erupted behind us, resonating with screams and laughter woven together. Finally reaching the exit, I pushed the door open, sunlight flooding the darkness and blinding me for a moment. We spilled out into the crisp air, gasping for breath, the chaos of the gas station fading as we stumbled onto the pavement that I turned. The gas station stood there ominously, unchanged and yet completely altered, shadows still twisting within its confines. What was that? She breathed, fear mixing with disbelief in her voice. That I shook my head, overwhelmed with both relief and uncertainty. "I don't know, but we have to leave. Whatever that was, it isn't done with us." As we walked away, I stole one last glance at the gas station, the weight of 1,000 questions lingering in the air. The figure was gone, but perhaps not for good. I knew something had shifted within me, a darkness tethered to understanding, to shadows lurking just beneath the surface. Months have passed since that night. I've stayed away from gas stations, but sometimes I still feel those eyes on me, tracking my every move from the edges of my recollections. And I wonder, was it truly over, or had I invited something unfathomable into my life? I moved to a different city after that. Often, I think back on the gas station. I wonder about the woman, if she escaped too, and how many others were still drawn in by the shadows. The questions linger like ghosts, waiting to be answered, as I try to ignore the whispers that reach me in quiet moments, reminding me of the darkness that lurks just beyond reach.